On behalf of my colleagues, welcome to today's GNCC Lunch and Learn, generously sponsored by the YMCA of Niagara. The topic today is the power of relational versus transactional relationships, exploring the dynamics that shape successful interactions, foster lasting connections, and elevate all of our business strategies, ultimately creating a transformative impact in our business relationships. My name is Mishka Balsam, and I will be your moderator for the next hour. And today's speaker is going to be ALU McCABE, whose career in human resources and in talent management spans over 2 decades, showcasing an unwavering dedication to excellence. Beginning in 1998 at Manpower Services, Inc., her journey led her to notable roles such as HR Center Manager at the Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, where her commitment to diversity doubled the HR Center's financial performance. And in 2012, she returned to Niagara. We're very fortunate for that choice of hers, with international HR experience and an impressive designation, including CHRE and PHRI and SPHI certifications. ALU has firmly established herself as a prominent advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion, staff development, and workforce engagement. She was appointed as the Chief Human Resource Officer at Ferguson Neudorf Glass in January 2022, and with that is also breaking tradition as the first female executive in 60 years, concurrently serving also as the president of a company called Trusted Time. Her career underscores the transformative impact of psychological contracts in the workplace and the principles of leadership development. So really, really pleased to have her with us. So thank you, ALU, for being here with us. But before we move into the topic of today, I also wanted to extend a loud hooray and a thank you to the YMCA Employment and Immigrant Services for proudly sponsoring actually the Lunch and Learn sessions. Their support is invaluable as they offer employment programs that assist job seekers from entry-level positions to senior roles, making the job search journey more manageable. And at the same time, they're also working with so many employers as they provide extensive employment service programs at the same time. And now, without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Kelly Jones with the YMCA to give us a brief update. Kelly, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Mishka. I appreciate it. Yeah, with the YMCA of Niagara, right now I'm at our Niagara Falls office, which has been a very busy office. We've seen a huge influx of new Canadians with the YMCA of Niagara Employment and Immigration Services. And so things have been going really well, but now we're ready to move some of those new Canadians in a program that I'm working with, Employer Link, which is a partnership with Workforce Collective and the YMCA of Niagara and funded by the IRCC, which is about linking new Canadians with the experience and education that they had from their home country and trying to find those inroads here in Niagara. So it's a key program, obviously, to help fill the workforce gap that we have right now and the skill gap that we're seeing in Niagara, but also making sure that these new Canadians that are highly skilled stay in Niagara, which is going to be an important part of our economy. And then most importantly is looking at different opportunities for them and doing some research with the Workforce Collective. So probably around June of 2024 or July of 2024, we're going to have some of our research and findings from that research to see what it is that is holding back some Niagara employers on hiring highly skilled new Canadians, and then what are some of the success stories, which is an important part of that. Overall, we our 3 offices in Thorold, St. Catharines, and Niagara Falls are doing great work with employers from all over, not just for new Canadians, but for established Canadians that are here in Niagara as well. So we are looking forward to ALU's presentation, who is a key partner for the YMCA of Niagara, and showing our ability to obviously work with for-profit and nonprofit agencies, some of our great businesses in Niagara. And I think that's a key strength that the YMCA is looking forward to, and working with more great people like ALU and, of course, the GNCC. So thanks for this opportunity, Mishka and the GNCC. And we look forward to the presentation, ALU. No pressure.
Thank you very much, Kelly. And I also wanted to say not just thank you for supporting this Lunch and Learn series of ours, but at the same time also the work that you're doing with newcomers. And I think they represent, I think, such a great opportunity for us. And we really need to make sure that we remove any possible barriers to ensure that the integration is as smooth as possible. So it's thank you for all of your work in that particular area as well. But before we delve into today's webinar, I'd like to introduce a brief 5-minute financial download from C.R. Smith Financial Services, Inc., brought to you by Brandon Curry, advisor at C.R. Smith Financial and Sun Life Financial. Brandon, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again, Mishka, for the kind words in the introduction and the opportunity to speak. As stated, my name is Brandon Curry, and along with my colleagues on this call, Matt Milner and Jay Fast, we are from C.R. Smith Financial. Next year, C.R. Smith Financial will have been in business serving the Niagara and broader Canadian community for 50 years. There are 3 main facets to our business: insurance, which encompasses life insurance, health insurance, and disability; wealth, where we are a full service brokerage that has partnerships with all the major fund companies in Canada, where we specialize in financial planning, aiding families to transfer their assets and wealth to the next generation, and also aiding businesses with their succession and organization planning. Finally, it's the group and personal benefits, which we are one of the largest group benefit brokers that aid businesses with fully customizable and benefit plans, along with group RRSP plans. Last month, we touched on the importance of rounding out a group benefit plan with a healthcare spending account and or wellness spending account. Today, we will be chatting about the benefit of having a shareholder agreement, and which will also encompass a buy-sell agreement that outlines all the important directions to the existing shareholders when certain situations arise throughout a partnership, specifically an untimely illness, injury, or worse, death. A shareholder agreement is an agreement between the owners, which are the shareholders of a company. They can be comprehensive, wherein they address a variety of issues, or they can be limited in scope and designed for a specific purpose. There are 2 types of shareholder agreements. There's the one that everyone is used to, which is a general shareholder agreement, which is treated as a commercial contract between the parties and is subject to corporations' articles and bylaws, together with applicable statutes. They typically deal with a wide variety of issues, and there is no statutory requirement for the content that they contain. As a result, they are very complex to negotiate because they are entirely dependent on the context of each scenario. A well-drafted shareholders agreement requires time to understand the business and its goals in order to create customized terms to meet the needs of the parties. Consequently, one of the benefits of negotiating a shareholders agreement is the process of doing so, as the shareholders may gain a better understanding of the aims and direction of other shareholders and the business as a whole. 5 key areas that a general shareholders agreement cover: management and government, terms and restrictions on selling interests, that is a big one; management of disputes, how to value the company if a shareholder leaves or passes away; and non-compete, non-disclosure, and non-solicitation. The second is called a unanimous shareholders agreement, or otherwise known as a USA. A USA is a specific type of shareholders agreement in addition to managing the relationship between shareholders, as is done with the general shareholders agreement. A USA can transfer authority from directors to shareholders. The Ontario Business Corporations Act and the Canadian Business Corporations Act both allow for shareholders to restrict the powers of directors to manage or supervise the management of the business and affairs of the corporation. They override the common law rule against fettering the discretion of the directors. Though directors are to serve the interests of the shareholders, from time to time, shareholders are not pleased with their decisions. In such cases, it can be cumbersome to requisition a meeting to remove the incumbent director or directors in order to appoint a new director and effect change of policy. Finally, there's a buy-sell agreement, which is incorporated in the plan. As a business owner, ensuring the longevity of your company is an important and often overlooked part of your financial plan. While business partners usually believe they will be in business together well into the future and forever, and nothing will ever happen, we know that this is not always the case. There are numerous situations that can impact the success of your business, which deserve serious consideration. Your business can be disrupted if one partner dies, leaves due to permanent disability, retirement, bankruptcy, divorce, or an unresolved dispute between business owners and shareholders. If your business loses an owner, the remaining partners must decide how the business will continue. You generally have 4 options to consider: close the business down, continue the business with a new partner, which typically automatically becomes the spouse of the deceased, as an example, sell your shares, who will buy them and at what price, purchase the shares from a deceased owner's estate. A buy-sell agreement can protect your business from the potential damage of losing a partner. This type of agreement covers both the terms of ownership and the operation of your business and should be a crucial element of your business plan. A buy-sell agreement addresses the death, disability, and retirement of one of the owners, as well as disagreements about ownership and operation of the business that can result when an owner wants to exit the partnership. The agreement often includes a formula or process for valuing the business to simplify the buyout of an owner. Our firm, when faced with a buy-sell agreement drafted by a law office, we use life insurance, critical illness, disability insurance to ensure that the business is properly funded in case of an unexpected event. The last thing you want to happen is an unexpected tragedy, and you have to borrow money, especially right now with interest rates being so high, which may sink an organization. Utilizing insurance policies to potentially fund this type of a buyout is the most economical, fiscal prudent, and reliable way to ensure your business is fiscally sound in the event of an unforeseen event. As always, thank you very much to the GNCC for this time today. And if you or someone you know would like more information on any of these topics, please do not be afraid to reach out to one of us. Thank you, Mishka.
Brandon, thank you so very much. And although I have to say, this is so important, the information that you shared. It is really critical to the success and longevity of the success of any business. So I really appreciate you bringing it forward. Sometimes when we look at this information, it's rather on the kind of like dry side, the things that may not get us excited all the time, but I think it's so critical to have this framework in place and the structure in place to ensure actually the health of our organization and also at the same time the well-being of everyone who is part of the organization. So Brandon, thank you very much for being with us over this lunch hour, and the information is greatly appreciated. And if any one of you require any more direct information how to get a hold of Brandon or not, just let us know via the chat function, and we'll forward the information to you as well. And on that note, it is my great pleasure now to hand the reins of today's Lunch and Learn over to our esteemed speaker, ALU McCABE. We eagerly anticipate her insight and wisdom. And remember, we'll take questions at the end of the presentation. So feel free to utilize the chat function at any time with any questions that you have during the presentation. We will actually keep our eyes on it, and we're really committed to getting to all of them. And additionally, if you'd like to enable live transcript, you can find that option on your Zoom screen as well. If you have any technical challenges or difficulties, please utilize the chat function. We will see it at all times on our end and are committed to helping you out. ALU, and now I'm just handing it over to you, probably for about the next 20 minutes roughly. Am I right? Somewhere in there, 20, 25 minutes, and then we'll have another 20 minutes at the end for all the questions that some of you have already brought forward to us, and hopefully more coming during the presentation. So ALU, over to you.
Thank you. So hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is ALU McCABE. Mishka gave an introduction of my career. But to put it into context and why I'm probably the speaker for this topic is I came to Canada when I was 21 years old. I came alone. I had no idea how to navigate the landscape. I had no idea what to do. But more importantly, no one would hire me. Literally, that I had a 3 a.m. job at UPS because they were the only ones who took a chance on me. I moved to Niagara in 1998. I started my career here as training manager for Manpower, which was fantastic. And that's, you're talking about 5-6 years later. And then I went to the cruise ships with Royal Caribbean, as Mishka had said. But then I came back to Niagara in 2012, and Mishka had made a comment, and she said, you know, we're thrilled to have you. And I thought to myself, this is the worst year of my life. No one would hire me. And I came from a director position No one would even acknowledge my skills. And and I had to take a receptionist job at $13.45, and that was offered to me by the YMCA, which was my foothold into Niagara. And I spent 5 years while I was with the YMCA, which is amazing opportunity to get to know the employers in Niagara, focus on what the needs are, and then I did my thesis on what the employers and employees were saying in Niagara. So the information I have is grassroots, it's local, and it talks about what is actually happening in the foreground. And the reason I did the thesis on psychological contracts is because I already saw the gap, and this is not new information, it's just new information to us. So that's just a fast forward summary of myself. Now, my company's Trusted Time. We do fractional HR services. So we service three types of companies. We service the micro to small businesses which have no HR, and they can't afford one. So we charge a very nominal fee and we make our money through the collective. The second type of companies we serve are the mid to sort of semi-large companies where they have an HR. And we support them because, as we know, HRs get bogged down and they don't have time to work on projects, strategy works, recruitment, whatever they need. We support while they're doing their items. And the third company support we give is they have everything, but they need an HR strategy on how to get them from this dollar amount to the next dollar amount. So that's a rundown of what Trusted Time does. So if you have any questions around that, happy to answer. And if you need support in that area, again, happy to have that discussion. But I'm gonna try and share my screen now again. I did it successfully earlier. So let me attempt this again. Oh, look at that. Okay, here we go. I think I can do this. And please let me know, Michaela, if no one can see it, but I'm assuming that everybody can see it at this time. So businesses are struggling, some more than others, when it comes to human resources or human capital, because for every time you have to change it over, it costs you a good chunk of money. A labor, if you do a really, or even an entry level person, if you do a calculation, that's a lot of money. You're talking between, $15,000 to $25,000 just to replace, go through the process, do all those things. But higher levels, you're talking the 60,000s, and so turnover is not great for any business, any type of business, a not for profit, a for profit. Um, it is not the medley to have, but the reality is some of this is on the employer. We have to understand how to move from transactional leadership to relational leadership. But why do we need to do this? What is the shift about? I mean, why is it even necessary? Is because the dramatic event of COVID, which is an affective event, which is a profound disruptive event, amplified the need for it. So I'm going to take you back to the 1800s. Here's what I want you to picture. There were factories and businesses where people working were told when they could go to the washroom, what time they could go to the washroom, because they believed in this sort of Scientology, not Scientology, but the Marxist type of regime where everything was based on how much production per minute. So it really mattered. Here's the problem. Society said, well, people should be respected. They should be able to go to the washroom when they want to. They should be able to eat their lunch at a decent amount of time. And so it created this disconnect between what the business world was doing and what society was doing. Fast forward to today, the same thing has been happening over time, but depending on which society, it was impacting them a little later. Now, this is not new news. This was happening since, the 90s. For every decade, there's a shift that happened in the business world. But when one dramatic event happens, it propels the need for a shift. And that need for a shift keeps motivating people. It keeps people coming into the workplace. But more importantly, it's feeding different motivating factors than you weren't used to before. right? It's no longer I pay you, you show up, this is my expectation, you go home. That was the 80s. Today, it's a very different motivating factor. So the currency has changed. Um, in keeping people in the workplace, yes, they'll come in for the money, but you'll see sometimes they stay, sometimes they don't. Or sometimes you say, I can't find people, and we pay well, or I can't find people and we give them all this. But you have to understand how the currency has changed to be able to do that retention. So to the employer who says you just need to show up to work, that's all I want, seems to be quite simple. But we need to understand what the psychological contract is. The psychological contract is a contract between an employee and an employer that is not the physical contract. So it's the part of the mechanism that explains satisfaction. So, for example, you hire me. I come into your workplace. I sign my contract. What does my contract tell me? The legal terms. It tells me my money. It tells me my time off. It tells me maybe my deliverables in some cases. It'll give me the black and white points necessary for arrangement. What it doesn't tell me is how nice or not nice you are, how it is to work with you, what does the team look like, what does the culture feel like. All those pieces I'm putting in my head to make up the psychological contract. And that changes within 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, etc., and moving forward. Now, depending on the fulfillment of my psychological contract will determine how engaged I am as an employee. So let's talk about engagement. It's characterized by vigor, like this high activation. It's a sense of significance. Schofley and Becker defined it as being fully concentrated and happily engrossed in one's work. That engagement piece is fully dependent on that person's psychological contract. Okay. So the link between psychological contract and engagement is when the employee says, if you did it right, I would show up to work. So there's these expectations from the employer, there's these expectations from the employees, and the disconnect there is not understanding how to marry the two, or what matters, what is the currency that is important in today's world. So what we know is this: research confirms that the psychological contract alters behavior and attitudes in the workplace. So if you have someone coming in and they're disengaged and they're just upset every day, if you know how to use the psychological contract, you can 100% help change some of that attitude. In some cases, you may not, but in most cases, you can, and you can identify what the problem is. If people are willing to meet somewhere in the middle, you typically can change someone from being disengaged to somewhat engaged and then fully engaged as the time goes on, even though they've been disengaged for a couple of years. The research also confirms that engagement is necessary for a business to stay competitive, because you want your staff and your employees and your team doing more than what they're they're just tasked to do, because they want to do it for you being the employer, for you being the immediate supervisor. And understanding the difference between how to reset someone's mindset to get you to a place of competitiveness and business advantage is critical for any type of growth. So we discover potential embracing growth through relationship management. So do I use more transactional? Do I use more relational? How do I find the medley? Which one gives the highest probability? I will say 100%, if you're not already doing this, you need help. You need advice. You need someone who can say, okay, here is how you get there. Let's get to know your teams. Let's get to know the people. But the person or the persons who impact this most to be able to move from a transactional to a relationship is the immediate supervisor. It's not the CEO, it's not the VP, it's that person's immediate supervisor. So the layers have to matter. So the immediate supervisor of this level of employee needs to be able to move from transactional to relational, because that would matter more than the CEO. But this supervisor needs to be getting it from management, and so on and so forth. So it is a downward trickle, but the impact is upward, because it's the people on ground zero that are actually doing the major work, so that the people above can create strategies on how to propel the business forward. So how do you know? More or less, if you look at the area of best performance here, that is critical. That is the point or the peak you'd want everybody at, where they're not on the left side of the screen or the right side of the screen. And that happy medley comes from a happy and satisfied psychological contract of the employee. Now, psychological contract sounds like, oh my gosh, that's so like, we're not psychologists. No, but all it means is, what is the perception in someone's head? What is happening with them in the workplace? And we need to focus on that more than what did they sign in their contract, because people have choices, which means they can stay or they can leave. But more importantly, this is how culture is fixed. It is fixed by an agreement that everybody's psychological contract is in. And if you don't know how to reset that, or you don't know how to set it up before you hire the first 5 employees, you're going to have a harder time later on. But if you're already in the thick of it and you want to do some shifts, that is possible. So how to combine the science with people? So I'm going to start by saying this: human resources is a science. It's a science because there are theories, there are concepts that tell us, if you do this, this is sort of the result you get. However, the human resource science or the human relation science is based on probabilities, not absolute. So if you build a bridge, you can't go off by even an inch, a centimeter, a millimeter. You can't go off because a screw will get loose, it's dangerous, etc., etc. With human resources, the science is there, but how you apply it is dependent on the uniqueness of the person you're applying it to. So if you don't know your people and you can't figure out who they are and what motivates them, your probability of success lessens. Now, somebody say, we have too many people, I don't have the time for all of it, which is specifically why part of an HR strategy would be to create those layers where someone is championing a group of people, because it's containable. Why is this important? Why is any of this important, quite frankly, is because we've had that, you know, we've had that affective event. We've had something that's propelled us to the space and time. We need to be able to be managing people virtually, blended, in the office, and we need them all engaged. So how do we do that? So let me give you some grassroots data that's local to us. I don't know if everybody can see the screen there, but what this shows is based on surveying 517, I believe, employees in Niagara. This is what they're saying. They are agreeing with the psychological contract theory. And basically they're saying that if the psychological contract is content, engagement rises. And you can see the clustering on the right there. That's telling you that there's more evidence of that. What you're seeing on the left are outliers. Those are the people that could be in unionized environments where they're, where they don't have any motivation because they will never get past what the structure looks like. It could be people in their retirement. So you have a few underlying on the left side there, but the majority of the workforce, which is 35 to 40 in the mid-level and late 20s in the sort of entry level, is what we surveyed. And this is the result of it. Trust and perceived fairness are the number 1 and 2 things that matter to people. But in order to do that, the psychological contract must be content. This is where you'll see the transition from transactional to relational. I am now working because I have a relationship with you and with this company, and it's mutually beneficial. So how do we effectively lead using the psychological contract as an influential tool to move engagement levels? So first of all, you must understand the theories, and that's where you'll get an external party like my company, or if you choose someone else, to draw insight on how to manage the reactions, attitudes, and behaviors. But you can also preempt them. You can say, if this happens, I know this is the reaction we're going to get. Do we need to manage them, or do we need to change our agenda? You must also understand how to reset the psychological contract. So your company's been around 4 or 5 years, even longer, and you just have those group of people that you're saying, I can't get them engaged, I can't shift them, and quite frankly, it's too expensive for me to just get rid of them. Well, let's reset them, right? And it mitigates turnover extension and becomes a win-win. Now, this is not absolute. As I said, there would be that one-off person that we cannot reset, and that happens, but it's still mitigating risk. And the third piece is you must learn how to renegotiate it. Drawing insight and renegotiating it are two different things, but you can only draw insight if there is some satisfaction in the psychological contract. So this is really the journey that happens when you move from transactional to relational, or when you move a medley from transactional to relational. The danger in what happens here is when we flip-flop. Oh, we gave them too much. Oh, we're giving them too little. Oh, I tried everything, it didn't work, so I'm going back. If the plan isn't sound and you can't stick to the plan, this is when the danger components come in. And we need to be careful around that, because then automatically you've breached the trust. Now, why am I so passionate about this? Because I'm out there, I see what's happening, I have done the research to no ends. There is a clear divide in some cases between what employers are expecting and what employees are expecting, because both of them have a very different psychological contract of the relationship. It is the time to marry both, because it's only going to be more prevalent moving forward, that this is about relationship. This is about getting your deliverables from your employees, from your teams, because they want to, not because you're paying them. That is not the only currency that matters anymore. We need to understand the new currency. We do it financially when Bitcoin came, etc. Everybody jumped on it. So why are we not doing it when it comes to employment? Because it gets dangerous if a few are moving forward, probably more than a few, and you have these cities that are gravitating towards this, and then our employment situation is a little left behind and we're not catching up. It becomes, you're behind the eight ball, because in order for you to stay competitive, in order for you to propel, in order for you to get to that next million, you need engaged people on your team. So it's very important to understand this particular topic. And that is it for my presentation. So I'm just going to open it up to Mishka and to questions, and see if anyone has any input they'd like to share.
ALU, thank you so very much. This has been extremely helpful and insightful, actually. I also appreciated how you linked it to your own personal journey at the same time. So it was good to see. So in an effort to look at some of the questions that have come forward, and just for clarifying purposes, I was wondering if someone would ask you and say, like, how can you define and differentiate between a relational and transactional relationships? If you would say, like, here are the 3 points that define relational, here are the 3 things that define transactional, or the words or terms, what would you say is defines relational, defines transactional, and therefore by defining those 2 terms very specifically, it would also show the difference and how they differentiate from each other?
So if you're looking for words to identify transactional relationship, it's quite simple. It's reward or punishment. If you do well, I'll reward you. If you don't do well, I punish you. When it comes to relational relationships or leadership, it is more about mutual understandings. respect, and equity. So it's the perceived perception of fairness and trust. And that's what defines the other, really, the two concepts. Transactional leadership does not concern itself with the well-being of the employee unless it dramatically impacts their work. Relational relationship concerns themselves with the well-being of the relationship and the employee first to get the result of the work.
That makes sense, actually. It's a good differentiator. I often look at transactional. When we use it in business, often it's a transaction. I pay $50 in return, I'm going to get this product or service. That's kind of when I think of transactional. I'm coming back, I might choose to come back, I might choose not to come back, but each relational and transactional approaches, are they both needed within a business interactions? Are they both needed within the dynamics of a business, or is only one needed and the other never needed?
It's 100% needed, but the value of the currency has changed. So take the dollar market. Sometimes the Canadian and US dollar fluctuate in value. View it that way. So at one point in the 1800s to the 1980s, it was only transactional that mattered.
Mm-hmm.
The relational was there just because if someone likes someone, they'll go for beer. Like, it wasn't a thing. But if you look at the decades, the relational currency is now getting important. COVID hit, boom, it's suddenly the higher currency because a dramatic event happened. Doesn't mean we don't have goals, we don't have targets, we don't have profit margins. It doesn't mean all that. It just means how you get to that changes.
So if I look at an example for it, and that comes to mind when I saw the biggest shift, it's like, I think of the golf course, and I don't know why. I'm not really an active golfer. I'm most definitely not a good golfer, so that I don't know what that makes me, but the occasional golfer probably. And often in the 80s, 90s, people said a lot of, and probably going into 2000s, a lot of business has been done on the business course, because it has an aspect of being relational around something. It could be the golf course yesterday, it could be a concert or a sports event that you might go to, or like anything like this, but it's relational that you're building. But at the same time, it has a transactional component to it. I remember a tremendous amount of businesses looking at it and saying, yes, we hosted this event, but really the value was extraordinary to us. So when does one know which one is right? When does one know to saying, like, now I need to shift from one to another, and back and forth? And I can see it being a challenge likely sometimes, because if one interactional dynamic is used to the relational aspect of it, and now you're bringing in transactional approach to it, there could be a challenge. And vice versa, probably too, although I see the bigger risk of moving from relational to transactional. But I was wondering if you can give us some insights on that.
Yes. So first of all, there is a huge difference between transactional and relational when you based on the output. So take your golf course example, or even take any construction, manufacturing plant, whatever the case may be. They get their projects because someone is shaking hands with someone else and they like them.
Yes,
They
true.
trust them. I'm not going to give you a $50 million project if I think you're going to bomb it. So there's something there that's already happening. I'm also not giving it to you if I don't think I can work with you. Okay, so you have the business aspect of things. It will always start relational and then move transactional. In the employment world, because of the new immigrant situation, because we're culturally wider, because globalization, the world is smaller. I have a client that has employees from all continents. That's her employment base. And she only has virtual meetings with them. So the engagement level has to really be nurtured. But that is purely relational, because in some societies there's collectivism, individual. You have to know your people. Now, a business only survives if the targets are met, or there's a plan, there's a strategic business plan. So that has to stay constant. The relational would matter when the relational matters in getting to know your people. So when you say to me, how would you know which one to use? Like, how does it happen? What is more, what is less? It depends on who you have in your chessboard, right? If you have a group of people that want it only one way, which is unusual now because you have so many cultures, so many dynamics, so many type of people, and you get to know that, the relational piece would be paramount. If you're running a plant, right, and your supervisors are not trained, which, can I just digress from this a second? We put so many people in positions that have no idea how to manage people, yet they want productive output. So FYI, please, let's stop doing that. But you take a manufacturing plant, a construction plant, even a service industry, financial industry, dental industry, it doesn't matter. The relational piece comes with getting to know your people. How much you invest in that is dependent on how much they need it. But that is a matrix that we can come up with. It's not a difficult matrix. It's just being able to find out what KPIs we need to measure when it comes to engagement. And once you know that, you'll be able to find your medley.
I think so too. I've always said in my career that I think trust is the foundation of everything and will determine the speed in which actually a relationship actually moves forward, a business relationship moves forward. And I actually think when I think of trust, and I think it needs to be present in both. It needs to be present in relational, but also in transactional approaches, because the majority of approaches or transactions we probably do are more transactional in our day-to-day life. The insurance company I utilize, or the groceries I buy, there's transactional things, but I trust them to some degree. I trust them that they will be there in case the situation is different. So I think you're right when you mentioned early on the value of trust and the differences that we are facing. Some of our attendees have asked if you can share examples of successful businesses that have thrived by prioritizing actually relational relationships over transactional ones, and maybe that have moved away and really changed their overall, the face and the way they communicate and present their own company in the public eye.
So I can't share my clients because of confidentiality, but what I can say, you look at Royal Caribbean. When I was working there, was the start of their introduction into the HR world. Prior to that, there was none. It was all, you show up, here's your contract, this is what you do. And they found that over the years, as they started focusing on people first, the relationship of the employees with the guests dynamically changed. And now they're spearheading these gigantic cruise ships because they made the money on the backs of people's engagements, and people's engagements came from well-being. Marriott International, there's an inspiring article that I shared with you, and you're welcome to share it, on how they went to people first. And once they went to people first, it just propelled RBC, Hyundai, Medtronic. These are big ones that you can that's public, and you can hear their stories. There's some Canadian ones. If you look at the HRD or HR Insider, it gives you a slew of companies that do this because it is proven. And when you said trust, Mishka, the science supports you, the data supports you. We don't come up with these concepts just because, oh, ALU's read a couple of books. No, there's actually some genuine research backing this up, because people are going, I can't find people, I can't keep people, they want too much. Well, listen, if you understood their psychological contract and yours, you'd be looking for the right people, and they'll be happy to be there because it's what you both want. But it has to be founded on trust and equity. That is the perceived fairness. People watch. So let's say I get paid $50,000, Mishka, and you get paid $60,000, and we're doing the exact same job. Joe here, earning $100,000, is upset with the company because I'm not treated fairly. Equity matters, right? So there are these little things that if a company understood this, they wouldn't be in a crisis. They wouldn't have an issue. And that's the reality of it.
Yeah, that makes total sense, actually, to me. There's a question that has come forward, and I think it's another very valuable one. And they asked actually what needs to be reflected in a company's or organization's vision, mission, or values that speaks to this particular topic. And the one that always comes to mind is one by Patagonia, and it's to save our home planet. That is theirs. That is the thing that gets them up in the morning to saying that each and everything that they're doing is with that in mind. And I was wondering, when you talk about the topic that you're so passionate about, what needs to be reflected in one's organization's vision, mission, or values? Where does it need to show that this is what you're standing for?
Okay, so this is a tricky one, because when businesses put up their values or put up their mission vision, it's always about what sets them apart. And it's about how they're expecting people to behave. The vision, the mission are quite separate, in my opinion, from the values, because the values is how the company inherently behaves. It would be ideal if there was a value that focused on people, putting the people first. It's not as much as what you put, but rather communicating a people first strategy, because that's not always easy, but then walking the walk along with it. So the danger comes when you say, we put our people first. A woman lost her childcare, and you're like, well, you only get 3 unpaid sick days or 3 family. Like, you're contradicting what you're putting. So I would encourage companies, put something about the people first only when your people believe it. Because if it's contradicting, it'll have the reverse effect and it'll sound like hypocrisy.
Yeah, that makes actually sense. Actually, it has to somehow show in the action. Words are easy to come by, printed ones, statements on a wall or in an annual report are one things, but what are the specific things actually that the organization has done and is doing in those situations? Because that's where we show up anyways. It's in everyday moments and in those specific times.
So I just want to add one more thing to that.
Yeah.
So the mission of Marriott, because I brought them up already, says, if we take care of our people, they will take care of our customers, and the customers will come back. They went to dramatic lengths to take care of their people. Nobody left. Nobody wanted to leave. In some cases, they made sure that their people were taken care of, and the people valued it so much. It just propelled Marriott.
Yeah.
Same thing happened with Royal Caribbean. I'm bringing these two because you can research them. It's out there. Royal Caribbean, during COVID, they kept the crew members on board. They were fed. They couldn't pay them what they were paying them, but they didn't say, get out on this port and stay there and find your way home. And when we're back, we'll call you back. That's not what happened. Right? So we need to figure out, if you're going to say in your core values that it's people first, and you're going to go with a relational transactional, but mostly relational currency, you don't walk the walk. I promise you it's going to be more detrimental.
I actually believe that too. I 100% actually agree with you. To each approach that we take, there are rewards, and we have, for the first kind of half of this webinar, talked a lot about the rewards of each one of those approaches, but often there are also risks that are involved in it, and that could affect employee loyalty, retention, customer loyalty, long-term partnerships that we have. When you look at relational and when you look at transactional, what have you identified as being the risks, other than if you don't deliver on them?
The biggest risk that happens when you're doing a change or where you're transforming, one is you're not actually asking, you're assuming. And you'll see this in a lot of leadership teams. And I don't know who's online because I can't tell, but you'll see it in a lot of leadership. Say, I think our people want this, and I think but no one's actually asked them. No one's actually, because in asking is the inconvenience. Oh, what if they say this and I can't do it? Then we'll look bad, right? Like it's this mentality that happens. So one is assuming your viewpoint is obvious. That's detrimental, because if you send a survey out without the right language, it's detrimental. The second risk, the biggest risk, is in the execution. When you create hope and you strip hope away, it's dangerous. Which is why the language in how you're asking really matters. Like psychological contracts, when you sum it up, Mishka, it's language. It is language that'll build the relationship. It's language, but if you use words that you didn't mean to use or you use them incorrectly, it can blow this thing all over. But if you do it right, it's fantastic. You will see the magic on the business side of things. But the biggest risk is, in my experience, is managers assume their viewpoint is obvious, and secondly, the execution just is so terrible on how they're moving from those things. So those are learned things. And again, I'll repeat, if you haven't successfully done it, get some help to do it, because at the end of the day, you're running a business to make the most the most you can out of it financially. And for the not for profits, I will say this, that their turnover is more expensive than a business's turnover because they're quite limited in their resources.
Yeah, it's true, actually. And I think all nonprofits actually are dealing with that too. Latest reports show a high burnout at every level that you have, a higher demand for nonprofits and charities and for their services with significantly less resources at a much higher cost. So there's a tremendous amount of stress points on some sectors that we have never seen in beforehand. But I wanted to come back because you made reference to language, and this is something that actually someone had texted into, and they asked about effective communications and what is critical in playing and building relational relationships. So we can talk to them as one form of communication, but there's 100 different ways that we communicate or share our messages. One-on-one, in person would be one of the ones. But what are other ways that actually an organization can effectively communicate and show to their customers, to their employees, to their stakeholders, really, and the stakeholders abroad, that this is their commitment and this is their approach to it?
I will say this, that there could be 1,000 ways to do this, but the one thing we really have to focus in is don't overpromise and underdeliver. That is huge, because that's a breach of trust altogether. But if you're going to make a commitment to something, you have to know why you're doing it, and the person receiving has to know why and why it's important. You take those two things away and you overpromise and underdeliver, it really, really goes south pretty quickly. But each communication style is different. Again, the language has to be in equity. It has to be in perceived fairness. It has to be based on trust. I spoke to a business person the other day, and he's like, I'm not telling my employees I feel that way. And I went, why not? Why not? If you're going to build a relationship with someone, they need to know that you're being honest all of the time, not just some of the time. So communication can be spectacular, Mishka, but if I don't believe you, it doesn't matter how great your words are. I don't believe you anyway.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense, actually. It's just interesting that often I think as leaders of organization, we forget about the number of touch points that we actually have with our stakeholders and community. There could be our social media presence. There could be our presence on saying, like, where do I volunteer my time? Where am I committing to the community? Where am I speaking out? Where am I staying quiet? Where am I taking all these kind of steps? And I think it's a really broad approach to having an understanding, to saying these are all the touch points that create a perception around your organization and the values that you hold and how you're moving forward, and really being acutely aware of that that aspect of it. You talked a little bit about the tourism sector of it. Are there specific industries where a relational approach tends to be more effective and vice versa?
Yes. So to be clear, the currency has changed. You got to have some component of relational in everything, but that currency has completely changed. But it's more prevalent in industries where you're expecting them to be front facing. So you don't have the four walls there. So any industry that's service, that's front facing, has to have more of the relational, because based on how someone feels and their engagement levels is what translates outside. Unless they're a damn good actor, it's going to come out at some point. right? But I just want to go back to your branding, how your organization is branded. I will tell you personally, as a fractional HR and the person who's done this study, there's some companies I just won't touch. And I'll tell you why, because I don't believe them. And so imagine the person working in that company. If from the outside you're looking in, you probably have people showing up every day, but I can guarantee you, I can even, well, I won't give my right hand because that's important, but I can guarantee you that they're there just for the buck and you're not getting the greatest output. But yeah, so anything that's service where you're expecting them to be front loading, front facing, it would matter more. That the currency is ebbing, is moving towards that. And you would ebb a little bit on the relational side. But even if you take manufacturing construction, we're finding that people are just not caring. And they're not caring in some cases because their engagement is so low. And I don't have time. Well, then hire a fractional HR like another company that you can afford to help you have that time. Because as an immediate supervisor in any industry, you have the largest impact to transforming that team member.
Yeah. I think I'm looking at the time. We have about 4 or 5 minutes left. There's one question that has come in from a couple of individuals. And if you could, the question relates to technology. And if you could provide insights into how technology and digital platforms impact the dynamics of relational and transactional relationships in a modern business landscape. And I think it really speaks to the idea of saying that, yes, we have some interactions in person. Yes, we have some of that, but also we really have moved away in some of the those elements. Technology, digital platforms have impacted in our relationships, in our transactions that we have. How can technology help us and digital platforms impact the dynamics, and how can they support the direction we want to go forward in?
So much. Like, I mean, companies at a certain size, in order to maintain the equity between performance management, the essence of psychological contract is that I matter to you. I can't matter to you if you're in a spreadsheet every day looking for my name, or you look for someone's name because you have 200 other things to do. So that's just one example, right? You have someone who's inputting, and quite frankly, there are reasonable costs out there. You can even do it online where it flags you so that you're equitable around the workplace. Also, what your company stands for, sending out those social brands where people are proud to be part of your company. That's a big one as well. HRRM systems for regular, to make sure that the compensation equity is there, the performance reviews there. There's so many components that technology can propel you in. However, I will also say this, not everybody can afford it. So we got to come up with another plan around it in some cases, but training for supervisors, doing different things. There's so many things you can do with it if you welcome it, for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. ALU, you've been incredible and so deeply valued for being with us for this last hour. So thank you for that. Thank you for our attendees and anyone who's tuning into it on their own term. We also wanted to say thank you to the YMCA Niagara for being a sponsor of this series. And I also wanted to say, if any one of our attendees have an idea of a topic or speakers that you wish to see or for us to consider in our lunch and learn lineup for 2024, please feel free to contact me directly or contact anyone else here at the GNCC. We would love to hear from you. And on that note, I wish each and every one of you a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.